I'm sure I'm standing in the same spot. I'm standing right in front of this log. I'm looking at the same tree. And up here, there's nothing. Whatever was hanging is now gone.
Have you ever wondered what secrets our national parks might be hiding? What if the most elusive creature in North American folklore has been documented by those sworn to protect our wilderness? Welcome to an investigation of concealed encounters from our national park system. What I'm about to share comes from reports filed by park rangers throughout the 1970s and 80s. Reports that were systematically removed from public records. These accounts detail strange encounters with unidentified beings that roam our protected lands. Through my investigation, I've uncovered evidence of a deliberate effort to keep these incidents from public knowledge. The individual who preserved these documents clearly intended for them to eventually reach the public eye, but felt the timing wasn't right. He believed society wasn't prepared to accept the implications of these encounters. I disagree. If there are indeed unknown entities in our national parks, visitors deserve to be informed. Concealing this information doesn't protect anyone. It only leaves people unprepared for what they might encounter in the wilderness. Let's examine one particularly compelling case from these recovered files. The Yosemite encounter, Ranger Thompson's unexplained discovery.
And our algorithm told us that Bigfoot should be migrating through this area for the next few weeks. So there's clearly a pattern here, and it's very possible that Bigfoot is here right now.
On November 15, 1973, Ranger M. Thompson of Yosemite National Park filed an incident report documenting what he described as an encounter with species of unknown origin while responding to a trapped animal call. According to Thompson's detailed account, his day began at 5 a.m. when campers reported a bobcat caught in what appeared to be an illegal trap near their site in the Upper Pines area. Thompson collected his equipment and drove the couple back to their campsite, where they directed him toward the distressed animal. Thompson noted he could hear the bobcat's cries from a considerable distance, along with detecting an unusual odor that intensified as he approached. He documented that this wasn't his first encounter with illegal traps in the park. He'd removed 4 or 5 similar devices over the previous year. What struck him as odd was their size. These traps seemed designed to capture something much larger than typical park wildlife. As Thompson approached within 25 yards of the trapped bobcat, he observed something peculiar. Despite its painful situation, the animal appeared more concerned with something beyond a nearby ridge than with Thompson's approach. The scent in the area had become overwhelming. Thompson described it as a combination of wet fur, decomposing meat, and skunk spray, so potent it caused him physical discomfort. While working to secure the catchpole around the bobcat's neck, Thompson became aware of strange movements and unfamiliar vocalizations coming from the ridge approximately 100 yards north.
And I heard this branch break. I saw a creature that was immensely huge looking back at me. It took off down the side of the ravine. I ran toward it. There was no way I would have any chance of catching up.
He reported an unexplainable sensation of being observed by something hidden just out of sight. What Thompson would encounter next would challenge his understanding of the natural world and raise questions about what truly inhabits the remote areas of our national parks. In his report, Thompson detailed his initial concern that a large predator, perhaps a wolf or bear, had been drawn to the trapped bobcat as easy prey. Not wanting to place himself between a hungry predator and potential meal, but equally unwilling to leave the suffering animal, Thompson worked quickly to free the bobcat from the trap. "I wasn't going to stick around long to figure out what was making those sounds," Thompson wrote, "and certainly didn't want to put myself between a hungry predator and a potential meal. I also couldn't let the bobcat suffer." Thompson described spending approximately 5 minutes pinning the animal down and using his foot to apply enough pressure to open the trap's jaws. Once freed, the bobcat displayed remarkable strength despite its injury, pulling against the catchpole with such force that Thompson nearly lost his footing. He managed to loosen his grip on the catchpole, releasing the animal, which darted away at surprising speed considering its wounded paw. After catching his breath, Thompson realized the strange sounds from the ridge had subsided. He speculated that the commotion from the struggling bobcat might have frightened away whatever had been lurking nearby. Still, he conducted a brief scan of the surrounding area, but found it difficult to detect any presence among the thinned winter foliage. Following protocol, Thompson returned to his vehicle to retrieve his camera and notebook to document the illegal trap. He warned the campers to remain vigilant for predators that might have been attracted by the injured bobcat, advising them to secure any food and be cautious during hikes. Upon returning to the trap site, Thompson began documenting the incident in his notepad and prepared to capture footage with his 8mm film camera, a personal purchase he'd recently begun bringing to work in hopes of recording wildlife. It was at this moment that the overwhelming odor returned, accompanied by the sounds of something substantial moving up the ridgeline. Whatever was there before had returned, Thompson wrote, and by the sounds of its distinct snorting as it appeared over the ridgeline, I quickly realized it wasn't a bear or a wolf. What emerged into Thompson's view defied conventional explanation. He described a massive upright figure covered in dark brown matted hair, estimating its height at between 7 and 8 feet tall. The entity moved with what Thompson called a human-like gait, but appeared more primate in nature. The creature paused at the ridgeline upon noticing Thompson. For approximately 1 minute, they stood motionless, observing one another across the distance. Thompson noted that his first instinct was to reach for his sidearm, but something, an intuition he couldn't explain, told him this would be inadvisable. Instead, he raised his hands in what he hoped would be interpreted as a non-threatening gesture. Strange sounds.
Tell me you heard that.
What happened next was perhaps the most extraordinary element of Thompson's report. The creature responded with what he described as a series of guttural, almost musical sounds, as if attempting to communicate or establish a connection. Thompson documented a profound shift in his emotional state during this exchange. His initial terror gave way to a sense of calm as he stood frozen, staring at the entity. "I got this sense that it didn't want to harm me, and I had no intention of harming it," he wrote. It was curious but not fearful. If anything, it had full command of the moment. So stunned was Thompson by the encounter that he momentarily forgot he was holding his film camera. As he slowly raised it to begin recording, the creature turned and moved back over the ridgeline. Thompson tracked it from a distance, capturing what footage he could before losing sight of it altogether. "It was as if it just vanished into thin air," he noted. "One moment it was there, then it wasn't." Thompson reported standing in silence for several minutes, staring into the woods in hopes of catching another glimpse of the creature. Eventually, he returned to the task of documenting and removing the trap before heading back to his office. The campers who had initially reported the trapped bobcat decided to cut their trip short after the day's unsettling events, a decision Thompson indicated he fully understood. The report concluded with a significant observation. "I think I now know what these big animal traps may be trying to catch. After this experience, I will do my best to search for more of these traps and remove them." Could Ranger Thompson's encounter have been with the legendary Sasquatch, commonly known as Bigfoot? The timing aligns with historical context. The early 1970s marked the peak of reported Bigfoot sightings in Northern California and the Pacific Northwest. Media coverage of these sightings was extensive, with eyewitness accounts frequently featured in news reports. However, the scientific community largely avoided engaging with what they considered fringe theories, refusing even to debate their validity. Napier's findings.
How tall was this thing?
Tall. I had to look at it. And it was big. It was at least 7 feet. I remember the sound of it coming after us. It's because it actually turned and looked at us and opened its mouth. The teeth on that thing was unreal.
One notable exception to the scientific community's dismissal was British primatologist Dr. John Napier, director of the primate biology program at the Smithsonian Institution. Napier, with his impeccable credentials and reputation for methodical research, became one of the first respected scientists to conduct a serious investigation into the Bigfoot phenomenon. In 1973, remarkably, the same year as Thompson's reported encounter, Napier published his groundbreaking analysis in Bigfoot, the Yeti, and Sasquatch in myth and reality. Napier's approach was rigorously scientific. He spent 3 years conducting exhaustive research that included personal interviews with dozens of amateur Bigfoot investigators and alleged eyewitnesses. He traveled extensively throughout the Pacific Northwest, visiting numerous reported sighting locations to assess terrain, vegetation, and potential habitat viability. Napier examined the limited physical evidence available in detail: plaster casts of footprints, hair samples, and alleged fecal matter, subjecting them to laboratory analysis rarely applied to cryptozoological claims. Perhaps most significantly, Napier conducted the first frame-by-frame scientific analysis of the famous Patterson-Gimlin footage captured in October 1967 at Bluff Creek, California, a location just 400 miles northwest of Yosemite. Using his expertise in primate locomotion and anatomy, Napier scrutinized the film's subject, paying particular attention to its gait, proportions, and musculature. Napier's conclusions defied easy categorization. While he maintained scientific skepticism and found the collective evidence insufficient to definitively confirm Bigfoot's existence as a biological entity, he acknowledged the compelling nature of certain findings. He was particularly troubled by the difficulty in dismissing the thousands of consistent footprint tracks discovered across approximately 125,000 square miles of the Pacific Northwest, and the hundreds of detailed eyewitness accounts from individuals with no apparent motivation to fabricate such encounters. In his published work, Napier made the remarkable statement, "I am convinced that Sasquatch exists, but whether it is all it is cracked up to be is another matter altogether. There must be something in Northwest America that needs explaining, and that something leaves man-like footprints. The evidence I have examined would not stand up in a court of law, but in my opinion, the existence of an animal of the type described is a justifiable conclusion." This carefully worded assessment from a scientist of Napier's stature represented a watershed moment in Bigfoot research, neither fully embracing nor dismissing the possibility of an undiscovered North American primate. His work established a precedent for applying rigorous scientific methodology to what had previously been considered merely folklore or hoaxes. Why might Ranger Thompson have been reluctant to explicitly identify the creature in his report? Even during the height of Bigfoot interest, the concept remained outside mainstream acceptance. Professional reputation concerns may have discouraged Thompson from speculating about the creature's identity, instead limiting his report to objective observations. For contemporary believers, organizations like the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, BFRO, established in 1995, provide resources for documenting and investigating reported encounters. The BFRO maintains a publicly accessible database of sightings across North America, each investigated to assess credibility. What might BFRO researchers have concluded had Thompson's report and footage been available sooner? We can only speculate based on the information preserved in his account and the degraded footage that survived. The film itself, despite being stored in suboptimal conditions for over 5 decades, has remained sufficiently intact for analysis. The quality has deteriorated due to environmental factors, but enough detail remains to warrant preservation efforts. This raises interesting questions. Are we examining genuine archival footage that was deliberately concealed, or perhaps a sophisticated hoax that was abandoned and forgotten? The full story may remain elusive. Many individuals who might have had knowledge of these events have either refused to discuss them or have passed away. The truth behind Thompson's encounter, whether it represents evidence of an undiscovered species or merely perpetuates a compelling wilderness myth, continues to elude definitive resolution. What makes Thompson's account particularly compelling is the detail with which he describes the interaction. Unlike many reported Bigfoot sightings that involve fleeting glimpses or distant observations, Thompson documents a prolonged encounter with apparent communication attempts. His description of the creature's vocalizations as guttural, almost musical, aligns with other accounts from the period, suggesting consistency across independent reports. The illegal traps Thompson mentions introduce another layer of mystery. Who was setting these oversized devices in Yosemite National Park? Were they placed by individuals who had previous encounters with the creature and were attempting to capture evidence, or the entity itself? Thompson's conclusion that he now understood what these traps were intended for suggests he believed others were aware of the creature's presence in the park. Thompson's emotional response during the encounter deserves further examination. His transition from fear to a sense of calm and the intuitive decision not to reach for his weapon indicate an unusual psychological component to the interaction. Some researchers have proposed that certain cryptids, including Bigfoot, may possess capabilities beyond physical attributes, perhaps including forms of nonverbal communication or emotional influence. Thompson's experience could be interpreted as supporting this hypothesis. The geographical context of the sighting is significant as well. Yosemite National Park encompasses nearly 750,000 acres of wilderness, with vast areas rarely accessed by humans. The park's diverse ecosystems, ranging from valley floors to alpine zones, could theoretically support an undiscovered large primate species, particularly one adapted to avoid human contact. The Upper Pines area, where the encounter occurred, sits in Yosemite Valley, surrounded by dense forest and steep granite cliffs. Ideal terrain for a creature wishing to remain hidden while maintaining access to water and food sources. Thompson's report also contains an important sensory element often mentioned in Bigfoot encounters: the distinctive odor. His description of a powerful smell combining wet fur, rotted meat, and skunk musk is remarkably similar to accounts from other reported sightings across different regions and time periods. This olfactory consistency across independent reports suggests either a genuine biological characteristic or a deeply embedded cultural expectation that influences perception during such encounters. The timing of Thompson's experience, early morning in mid-November, aligns with patterns noted by Bigfoot researchers. The creature is frequently reported during dawn or dusk hours, and sightings often increase during seasonal transitions when food sources may be shifting, potentially forcing the beings to expand their foraging range. What became of Ranger Thompson after filing this report? The documents provide no follow-up information. Did he continue his career with the National Park Service? Did he search for additional evidence of the creature? Did he face professional consequences for documenting his experience? These questions remain unanswered, adding to the mystery surrounding the case. Footage.
Yeah, I was coming down this road. I was on graveyard shift. Just the road happened to be clear at this moment when I'm coming down in my patrol car, and on the left side, this figure steps onto the roadway. I stopped my car and about 50 yards from it. I mean, the chest was massive, the thickness of it. It was covered in hair. 8 feet tall, around 800 to 1,000 pounds.
The film footage Thompson captured represents a tantalizing piece of potential evidence. While the Patterson-Gimlin film from 1967 remains the most famous purported Bigfoot recording, Thompson's footage, if authentic, would constitute another significant visual document from this era. The degraded quality makes definitive analysis challenging, but modern enhancement techniques might reveal details not previously discernible. Contemporary wildlife management practices in national parks have evolved significantly since the 1970s. Today's rangers receive extensive training in identifying and documenting wildlife encounters, with established protocols for unusual sightings. Would Thompson's experience be handled differently in the modern National Park Service? Would such a report receive serious investigation rather than apparent suppression? The broader implications of Thompson's account extend beyond the question of Bigfoot's existence. If large, undiscovered primates do inhabit North America's wilderness areas, this would represent a significant biological discovery with profound scientific implications. It would challenge our understanding of primate evolution, distribution, and behavior, while raising important conservation questions about protecting an undocumented species. For skeptics, Thompson's report might be explained as a misidentification of a known animal, perhaps a bear standing on its hind legs, viewed under stressful conditions. The human tendency to pattern match and the influence of cultural narratives about Bigfoot could have shaped Thompson's perception and subsequent documentation of the event. However, Thompson's professional background as a park ranger suggests an individual familiar with local wildlife and trained in objective observation. His report demonstrates careful attention to detail and a measured tone, avoiding sensationalism or speculation. These factors lend credibility to his account, even as the extraordinary nature of his claims demands extraordinary evidence. The illegal traps Thompson discovered raise ethical questions as well. If individuals were attempting to capture a Bigfoot, such actions would constitute wildlife harassment at minimum, regardless of the creature's taxonomic classification. Thompson's commitment to removing these traps indicates his concern for animal welfare extended to this unidentified being. As we consider the possibility that Thompson's encounter was genuine, we must also acknowledge the profound implications for wilderness management and public safety. If such creatures exist, should park visitors be informed of their potential presence? Would confirmation of their existence lead to harmful human-cryptid interactions, with curiosity seekers disturbing their habitats or attempting their own encounters? The decision to conceal Thompson's report, if indeed it was deliberately suppressed, reflects these complex considerations. Those responsible may have feared public panic, disruption to park operations, or an influx of Bigfoot hunters that would disturb both wildlife and legitimate park visitors. Alternatively, the suppression might indicate a deeper institutional skepticism toward unexplained phenomena, with career officials unwilling to associate their organizations with fringe subjects. For those who believe Thompson's account represents a genuine encounter with an undiscovered species, the question remains: how could such large creatures remain scientifically unconfirmed despite decades of reported sightings? Proponents suggest several possibilities: extremely low population density, high intelligence leading to deliberate avoidance of humans, habitat in remote areas, and the potential practice of disposing of their dead in ways that prevent discovery of remains. The cultural significance of Bigfoot extends far beyond scientific debate. Indigenous peoples across North America have traditions describing large, hairy humanoids that predate European contact. These beings appear in the oral histories of numerous tribes, often portrayed as powerful forest spirits, or a distinct people sharing the land. The consistency of these accounts across culturally distinct groups suggests either a common source experience or deeply rooted cultural exchange. Thompson's encounter, viewed through this lens, becomes part of a continuum of human-cryptid interactions spanning centuries. His report, with its detailed observations and emotional components, echoes elements found in both indigenous accounts and contemporary sightings. As we conclude our examination of Ranger Thompson's extraordinary report from that November morning in 1973, we're left with more questions than answers. Was his encounter evidence of an undiscovered species living in one of America's most visited national parks? Was it a misidentification influenced by the Bigfoot phenomenon that had captured public imagination during that era? Or perhaps something else entirely, an experience that defies our current categories of understanding? What remains clear is that Thompson's account deserves consideration rather than dismissal. His professional background, the detailed nature of his observations, and the film evidence he attempted to capture all suggest an individual genuinely trying to document an unexpected encounter rather than fabricate a sensational story. For those who venture into our national parks today, Thompson's experience serves as a reminder that these vast wilderness areas may still harbor mysteries beyond our current understanding. Whether you approach such possibilities with skepticism or openness, the wild places of our world retain their capacity to surprise, challenge, and occasionally unsettle us with glimpses of the unexpected. The truth behind what Ranger Thompson encountered that morning in Yosemite may never be fully resolved, but his detailed account, preserved despite apparent efforts to suppress it, ensures that we can continue to ask questions about what might exist beyond the boundaries of our confirmed knowledge, in the shadows of our national parks, just beyond the reach of certainty.